brute who beat up his ex in front of his own crying children has been jailed. His victims said their children were in such a state due to the horrific violent assault. Paranoid Paul Veitch accused his ex of having another man in the house. Instead, she was chatting to her friend on WhatsApp about Love Island. The 33-year-old shoved his way into their home and hit his partner of 11 years. At South Tyneside Magistrates Court, he was jailed for 18 weeks after his victim revealed the torture she had suffered at his hands. "I'm used to being assaulted by him, but I couldn't believe he's assaulted me in front of the kids," said the mum of two in a victim statement. It was heartbreaking to see them in such a state. Mr. Veitch even continued to pester his ex after the attack. With the court hearing, he made 6 calls to her as she made that victim statement to the police. The sentencing heard the stocky Mr. Veitch is a trained martial artist and has previous for common assault. While he had never been prosecuted for attacks on his long-suffering partner, the court heard how their relationship had been plagued with domestic abuse at the hands of a man she claims has a cocaine habit. That came to a violent climax on July the 19th when Mr. Veitch, whose own affair had ended their relationship, accused her of seeing another man. He lashed out with his victim stating, "I was crying and he was calling me horrible names. I didn't want to get help as I would have lied about where the injuries came from." Pennywell defendants of Parkmore Road pleaded guilty to assault by beating. In mitigation, even his own solicitor admitted the attack was horrible. But mitigating, Charlie Carr pleaded for the 3-person bench to suspend his prison sentence, arguing it was his first major conviction for violence. "His criminal record is all drugs and motoring offences," said the solicitor. "On the face of it, he does not appear to be a violent man." The defendant, said to have once been in charge of over 40 people at a factory, is now on benefits and training to be a fitness instructor. The court also heard that despite the attacks happening in front of his children, he still looked after them up to 4 times a week. And Mr. Carr added a short jail sentence would not only serve little purpose, it would also deprive his ex of a babysitter. However, he was locked up and made subject to an open-end restraining order. The defendant of Parkmore Road must also pay her £100 compensation. Burglar who took part in a Greggs ram raid was caught after footprints linked him to the scene. Liam Robert Facey, who was 23, has been jailed for 3.5 years for his involvement in the burglaries. Liam Robert Facey was one of 4 burglars who took part in a ram raid at the Greggs in Shotton Colliery Industrial Estate on January the 9th. The offenders smashed into the business after reversing a Land Rover into the building, but only managed to take off with a charity box. Almost exactly 24 hours later, Mr. Facey and another burglar were caught inside the home in County Durham and fled with jewellery when they were disturbed. Mr. Facey of Easington Lane appeared at Durham Crown Court via link from H&P Home House to be sentenced for 2 counts of burglary. The 23-year-old had admitted the offences. The court heard that Mr. Facey was one of 4 burglars who ram-raided the Greggs at around 9 PM on January the 9th after a vehicle reversed into the premises. Martin Towers prosecuting said the shop had closed earlier and the CCTV showed 4 people arriving in a Land Rover and forced entry. All that was taken was a charity box from the till area. CCTV showed that the offenders were there for 3 minutes. Mr. Towers added that the value of the damage caused is currently not known. A day later, at around 9 PM on January the 10th, Mr. Facey and another burglar broke into a County Durham home whilst the homeowners were away on holiday. A woman noticed the lights were on in the property on Station Road West in Coxholm and saw a Land Rover parked up which had no registration plate. The witness later returned to the address with others to check what was going on. Mr. Towers said they disturbed the 2 men who were in the process of committing the offence. One was wearing a balaclava and they ran past them to make their escape. When the witnesses went into the home, they saw that the jewellery had been stolen and a knife had been taken from the kitchen and left in the bedroom. Mr. Towers added, later that evening there was a police chase involving a Land Rover. The defendant was later found attempting to hide. He was linked to the offences via footprint evidence. The court heard Mr. Facey had 66 offences on his record, 23 of which were for theft. He was also on licence at the time of the burglaries. Jane Wagg, defending, said the Greggs burglary was not well planned, and he was inside the premises for around 3 minutes. She said, there is little to say by way of mitigation, save for his guilty pleas. He'd done quite well when released from custody, but he had taken a turn for the worse and he's resorted to offending again. He appears to be doing well in prison and has a job as a cleaner. He is said to be doing a great job. Sentencing Mr. Facey, Judge Joe Kidd jailed him for 3.5 years. Brazen Sunderland scammers made £2 million by tricking people into buying European health cards. Siblings Damien and Dale Zadeh were directors of the companies behind misleading websites. A Sunderland family who made over £2 million using deliberately misleading websites to trick people into paying for European health cards insurance have been jailed. Siblings Damien Sartip Zadeh, 32, of Angram Drive, Sunderland, and Dale Sartip Zadeh, 35, of Polperro Close, Royhope, were directors of the companies behind the misleading websites europeanhealthcard.org.uk and EHIC The elaborate scam saw the brothers use a computer program to push their misleading websites to the top of internet search results to receive consumers into needlessly paying for their EHIC, which were freely available from the official NHS website. The websites were, in fact, a front for a clever cut and paste job, with customers' details simply being copied over to the NHS website form. This investigation was led by the National Trading Standards EHIC team, which is hosted by North Yorkshire Council and the City of York Council. They were sentenced at Leeds Crown Court for 9.5 years and 8 years respectively, after being found guilty of fraudulent trading and laundering the proceeds between February 2013 and October 2019. Damien was also convicted of engaging in aggressive commercial practices after threatening consumers who complained to prevent them pursuing refunds. Damien and Dale have both been disqualified from being directors for 10 years. Their parents, Diane Sartip Zadeh, 60, and Mahmoud Sartip Zadeh, 62, both of Angram Drive, Sunderland, were found guilty of money laundering and sentenced to 2 years, suspended for 2 years. Both are also required to attend 10 activity rehabilitation days. Mahmoud Sartip Zadeh was also ordered to carry out 200 hours of unpaid work and disqualified from being a director for 5 years. Test purchasing of an EHIC by National Trading Standards through www.ehiccards.org.uk uncovered a range of misleading features on the site that undermined the NHS service and added no value for customers. For example, the site claimed it provided a check and send service for customers, but the test purchase showed the application was approved and sent within minutes of the application being made, proving that no checks could have been done, and the application was made using covert identities, so there was no way of doing any checks at all. The site also claimed it could provide fast track and 24/7 services. These are not possible with the EHIC. The investigation found that the colour and the background of the site was similar to the NHS and the government digital service websites, which could mislead consumers into thinking they were using official channels. The defendants also relied on a disclaimer that was buried in the footer text, which was the last paragraph on the page, which was not prominent enough to be recognisable as a disclaimer. The Honourable Judge Penny Bletcher referred to Damien being shown suggested prominent disclaimers by the prosecution counsel during the trial, when Damien said a consumer would see them and skedaddle off to the NHS website. The judge remarked, "The truth came out." Other false claims included that the NHS doesn't provide telephone or multilingual support or provide travel advice, which it does. Upon realising they had been duped into paying for a free service, many victims tried to complain, but were met with hostility and aggression. Requests from victims to cancel or receive a refund, which they were legally entitled to, were refused and often followed up with a threat of legal action if they attempted to claim a chargeback from their bank or credit card company. Judge Penny Bletcher said Damien used thoroughly aggressive and nasty threats when consumers realised they'd been scammed and tried to get refunds. The National Trading Standards case followed repeated warnings to the family to stop offending. Despite attempts by both the Advertising Standard Authority (ASA) and Sunderland Trading Standards to secure appropriate amendments to the website to prevent them from misleading consumers, the problems continue. The family were also arrested in 2016 in relation to an investigation by Camden Trading Standards. Although that investigation did not result in a prosecution, the family were warned about the consequences of any future similar behaviour. The matter was subsequently referred by the ASA to the National Trading Standards. Judge Penny Bletcher, referring to Damien's insistence that the family had done nothing wrong and his claim that he had not believed parts of the warning letter sent by Camden's Trading Standards, said, "If that was true, it shows breathtaking arrogance on your part. The brothers received large sums of money from the fraud, including monies which were initially transferred from their parents' accounts and subsequently diverted back to them. The family now face asset confiscation proceedings to remove the assets they obtained from the proceeds of the offending. Lord Michael Bitchard, chair of the National Trading Standards, said, "National trading standards and local trading standard teams continue to remove misleading websites, and the successful outcome of this case sends a clear message to the criminals that deceive consumers that will not be tolerated. We urge people to use gov.uk to find government services, the easiest and most secure place to find government services and information online, and reports suspected misleading websites to the Citizens Advice Consumer Helpline." The ASA Chief Executive Guy Parker said, "The scale and the aggressive practices behind this scam are a reminder to everyone about the need to be vigilant when making online purchases. These scams can affect anyone, from the vulnerable to the tech savvy. We will continue to work closely with the national and local trading standards to help protect people from this insidious criminal activity."